Welcome, Clubby. It's a sunny day. Glad to have you here. Thanks for tuning in. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I'm a CEO, coach, board member, and investor. And today we're going to be talking about understanding your customers' emotional decisions during the coronavirus crisis. Before we get to our event, I want to talk and thank our sponsors. Irish Titan is an e-commerce and digital strategy agency. Boulay accounting firm, CPAs and advisors, Highland Bank, a community bank, Minnesota Sales focused on accelerating sales at organizations, Romaine Berg does digital marketing, and the Network Connect is a catalytic gateway for connecting investors, companies, service providers, and folks looking for jobs. Our speaker today is Terry Wu. Welcome, Terry.
Morning, Rick. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you spending the time with us today. Terry is founder of Neuromarketing Services. And for those of you who don't know what neuromarketing is, it's a new science of consumer decisions. Studies how we make buying decisions and how our unconscious emotions influence our decisions. To learn more about Terry and his business, the website is neuromarketingservices.com. And if you've never had to spell neuromarketing yet, it's E before U. So Neuro marketingservices.com. To email Terry, it's terry@neuromarketingservices.com. So again, Terry, thank you very much for joining us today. Appreciate it very much. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your firm.
Thank you, Rick. My name is Terry. My background is neuroscience. I got my Ph.D. in neuroscience, and I spent about 30 years in neuroscience. Over the last 16 years or to 17 years, I've been in marketing. So the perfect marriage between neuroscience and marketing is neuromarketing. If you're not familiar with the idea, the concept of neuromarketing, it sounds complicated, but I want to give you a simple story to explain what it is. So imagine you own a fine dining restaurant. Business is a little slow. On Friday evening, you have 1/3 of your tables empty. How do you increase your sales for the evening? What you can do is you can play some background music. You want to play some slow tempo classical music, because when you play slow tempo music, you slow down people's eating. When you slow them down, guess what? They order more drinks. Then when you play slow tempo classical music, they order more expensive drinks. Just by simply turning on slow tempo classical music, you can increase the alcohol sales by 50%. This is the combination with two research studies. So neuromarketing is about understanding consumer decisions and why they make their buying decisions. And it focuses on how our emotions, intuition can shape our decisions. My company, we help our clients outsmart their competition by applying neuroscience to sales and marketing. That's what we do.
So I have to ask the question. So what happens if you go the opposite? You go fast music, louder, what happens?
So it's a great question. You move the table faster. So you speed up their eating and they get out of there faster. So, this is actually a perfect question. If you have a busy night, you have a long line of people waiting. They already have made the reservation, but things are moving really slow. You want to turn tempo a little faster, so make people eat a little faster. So you move the table a little faster, so you will not really make the people who are waiting in line too mad.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing that little tidbit. Of course, we need the restaurants to be open before we can start doing that, but nonetheless, appreciate the tip, and also gives us something to pay attention to as we're eating and listening and paying attention to the music that they're playing.
Exactly.
So speaking of the period of time we're in, what are you doing to stay sane and healthy and such at this shelter in place period of time?
Interesting question you ask. Actually, I kind of take this period as a gift, because this year my focus is on preparing more talks, and I want to actually start writing a book. And the title of the book is Why the Brain Buys: The Neuroscience of Sales and Marketing. So this quiet period of time gave me the time to focus on my goals, and also I'm a runner myself. I keep myself sane and healthy by running every day, and also I walk a number of miles every day. So far I've lost probably about 5 pounds since the start of the lockdown. I probably could lose another 1 pound by having a haircut. um,
Well, then I probably could lose a couple of extra pounds if I did that.
there you go.
Hey, so just for folks out there who are curious, so what kind of running? Long distance, just around the Minneapolis lakes, or what do you do?
Yeah, I run. We have a park right across the street. I run about 3 miles a day around lunch break, and then we walk about 4 to 5 miles in the evening. I'm a marathon runner. I normally do 1 to 2 marathons a year, but this year the Grandma's Marathon just got canceled. I doubt the Twin City Marathon will be there comes November, October. So I'm gonna skip marathons this year, but I do long distance running.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for sharing that with us. Appreciate it. So before we get to our event, let's discuss what you, the audience, can receive for your participation. If you type into the comments field, hashtag neuromarketing, and again, that's E before you, neuromarketing, and you put that into the comment field, you're going to be put into a drawing, and 3 of our participants are going to get an in-depth marketing assessment from Terry, a 1-hour virtual opportunity to speak with Terry about the marketing you're doing for yourself or your firm, whatnot. So it's a great opportunity to participate in today's event and get some assistance from Terry after the fact. So again, it's hashtag neuromarketing. And then I also want to let folks know that we're trying out a kind of post-event party or an after party. We're doing a networking session after this for anybody who would like to participate in that. You can highlight that in your comments field as well as submit questions throughout this event. We'll try to weave in questions that you, the audience, have into our conversation with Terry. So Terry, getting to our session today, in the past, you've spoken about the role of emotion in consumers' buying decisions. You talked about how consumers tend to make those decisions based on emotions and intuition instead of reason and logic. So now that we're in this crisis period and a lot of consumers are under stress, how does the stressful situation change their decision-making process? And do they rely more on emotions in making those decisions?
Great question, Rick. The quick answer is yes. We rely more on emotions in this special time. So in general, just about any time consumers, we as consumers, we make about 90 to 95% of our decisions unconsciously based on emotions, intuition, and feelings. Well, talking about stress, I want to kind of use one special, abnormal behavior to address stress. I want to talk about chronic hoarding to start out with. Hoarding is a very abnormal behavior. People make these irrational decisions. They start collecting things they don't need and the things they don't let go of the things they don't need. But what causes hoarding? Some studies have shown that hoarding starts out with stress. Very often these hoarders, chronic hoarders, they start out with a loss of a job, a terrible breakup, the diagnosis of a serious illness, and some traumatic events in their lives. And then they start hoarding things. They start collecting things. And the worst thing is they would not let go of the things they collected. It's simply because they're emotionally attached to the things they have. So this is kind of how stress can cause our behavior, can cause us to make very irrational decisions. But when it comes to hoarding, we see a very clear example of hoarding just recently. Started like a few weeks ago. People start hoarding toilet paper, bottled water, but you think about it. They think this is actually a rational decision. They think they need to buy toilet paper to keep themselves safe during this virus crisis. And then they all flock to the stores. That's a very irrational decision if you think about it. Crowded stores, the last place you want to be, during the crisis, because that's probably the easiest place to get infected. But with our stress, with our the news coming from all angles, telling us the sky is falling, we make these irrational decisions. So we go out there buy toilet paper. So stress can cause us to make more irrational decisions, and we rely more on emotions when we make decisions during this crisis.
So we also know that emotions can influence our memories. and then our memories can influence our decisions. Can you explain how the brain stores memories and then process emotions? And then can you also explain why the emotions have such a strong impact on our memories?
Okay, that's kind of a long question. I want to kind of break into smaller pieces first. The reason, for business leaders, actually, this is a great question for business leaders, because business leaders want to create something memorable, so your customers can remember what you sell. But how do you create something memorable? You need to create something emotional, because emotions have a very strong impact on our memories. So let's see how this works inside the brain. Inside, I want to kind of have a oversimplified version, how this works. There are two structures I want to discuss inside the brain. One structure is the hippocampus, and the other structure is the amygdala. And many people have heard the term amygdala. So I'd like to start out with hippocampus. In neuroscience, neuroscience learn how the brain works by kind of studying people who have that structure missing in their brain. So if you look at the structure, people with hippocampus missing in their brain, there's a very famous case study. So going back to the 1950s, we had this patient, his code name is HM. Later, we found out his first name is Henry. So Henry, in his 20s, he suffered uncontrollable epilepsy. So the neurosurgeon had to remove part of his brain to control his seizures. So during the brain surgery, they removed the hippocampus on both sides of his brain. So coming out of the surgery, Henry looked like a regular person. His IQ score even increased several points. But there's one problem. He couldn't remember anything anymore. He meet with you, and then he's like 2 minutes later, he forgets about he just met you, and he introduced himself again. He could not learn a new word. He could not learn a new sound. And even to the point, he ate his breakfast, and then 5 minutes later, he forgot he ate his breakfast. He ate his breakfast again. So from this patient, we learned that without hippocampus, we cannot remember anything. So hippocampus is a structure that's responsible for storing memories. And this, Henry is on one extreme of the spectrum. If we look at the other extreme of the spectrum, we look at people who have extraordinary memory. We look at this one group of people who are London taxi drivers. In order to qualify as a taxi driver in London, you have to memorize all the street names. You need to learn how to navigate inside London. It's a very complicated task. Normally, they spend 4 years to get licensed. So they look at the hippocampus, the size of hippocampus of London taxi drivers. The size is much bigger than the regular people's hippocampus size. So this is actually the brain structure, and also hippocampus is an integral part of our emotional brain. So this is actually very closely related to memory. So that's one structure. The other structure is the amygdala. Again, when it comes to neuroscience, we want to see, what happens when you don't have amygdala. There's this also very famous case, there's this patient's name, code name's SM. I think she's still alive, so we don't know her real name. So SM during her childhood, she had this rare brain condition. The brain condition destroyed the amygdala on each side of her brain. She lives a normal life, except one thing: she cannot experience fears. You show her a horror movie, she had no response. You take her to a haunted house, she was not startled. She was robbed at gunpoint once and robbed at knife point once. She recalled those experiences. She had no fear. So when you don't have this structure, people don't have fear. And you take a group of people who suffer, the loss or damage of the amygdala, you send them to a casino. They're going to gamble until they lose everything, because they do not experience any fear of losing, or they do not experience any fear of any risk. So this is kind of what happens when you don't have the amygdala. But the other group of people, they have a hyperactive amygdala. What happens is very often a lot of violent criminals, the activity level in the amygdala is very high. Also the amygdala level the amygdala activity level in the amygdala in the post-traumatic stress disorder patients, PTSD patients, is very high. So amygdala actually is responsible for regulating our emotions, especially when it comes to fear and aggression. So how does emotion influence our decision? How does emotion influence memory? Between amygdala and hippocampus, these two structures, one responsible for emotion, the other one responsible for memory, they're only one synapse away. So this tells us how important emotion is to memory.
Great.
So
Well, thank you. That's helpful to know and better understand. So thank you for that.
no, absolutely.
So how about elaborating on why business leaders need to pay attention to the connections that we just made between emotions and memories, especially during a crisis period like the one we're in right now?
Well, great question. So, when business leaders, you create product and services, you want to sell them. The best way to touch your customers is to create something emotional. And now, during the crisis, our emotions are running really high. This is the perfect time to create something that's make it more memorable and make the memory last longer. I give you two examples. I recently see from big business how they actually leverage their marketing messages to create long-lasting memories. The first example is Allstate, the insurance company. So during this crisis, people are scared. A lot of people are worried about their jobs and paychecks and pay the bills. And Allstate came out of a payback program because we're all in the lockdown. We don't drive as much, so we have fewer accidents. That lowers the cost of Allstate and all other insurance companies. So Allstate, came out with this payback program. They decided to pay back part of the money you already paid into the insurance premiums. It's very smart. It really catches the emotional state we have and calms people down. And then guess what? This move is going to make their brand more memorable and they make the memories lasting longer. People remember their last longer.
Yeah, I did notice that ad and that campaign. So now it helps me understand why it stuck with me a little bit. So that's interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, exactly. 5 years from now, or 3 years from now, we're going to remember about this, this lockdown. And then guess which company jumps out fast? Yeah. Is the company that pioneered this program. Yeah. Another really good example I want to do is quickly. Domino's Pizza. Not everybody can give back all the money, but Domino's Pizza, they just announced they're hiring 10,000 delivery drivers. Their business is booming. So they create this campaign. They give the message about people. A order of food. You worry about whether who's going to touch my food. When it comes out of the oven. Their marketing message is the pizza you have after it comes out of the oven. The only thing that touches the pizza is your hands. And they also have this contact-free delivery. So what they did is they calmed you fear. So they they remove your concern about people are touching your pizza, and they eliminated the fear, and then they meet you at where your emotional state is. So that's a really successful marketing message as well.
Yeah, and actually I noticed that one too. So interesting that I flagged both of those mentally when I saw them.
Good.
All right, so again, the crisis has a lot of significant impacts on consumers, their choices, their behaviors, what they remember, all these things that you've talked about. But how does the crisis impact things in the short term?
Great question, Rick. I think in the short term, we're going to see people tend to overreact or overreact to bad news and also overestimate the risk. I want to share with you this really interesting study. This study shows how we overestimate risk. So this is just a study. You gather a group of people, you tell them you have 1% chance getting an painful electric shock. How much are you willing to pay to avoid that shock? So on average, people say, I'm going to pay $7. So okay, 1% chance of getting a shock, they want to pay $7 to avoid it. Then you gather another group of people, say, hey, you got a 99% of chance getting electric shock. How much are you willing to pay to avoid this painful electric shock? Rationally thinking, if 1% chance we're willing to pay 7%, $7, almost 99% chance, probably we're going to pay maybe $600 or $700 to avoid that chance. No, 99% chance people are willing to pay about $10 to avoid that shock. So in our heads, 1% chance of a risk or painful experience is almost the same as 99% of chance of having a bad experience. So in our brains, we tend to overreact, overestimate the risk and danger. So you see a lot of people, overreact to different things, the bad news, and then, they make more emotional purchases. The other thing I kind of think about, is there will be actually probably a shift in how we spend money. People buy more things to make them feel good and make them feel comfortable. The sales of a liquor, the sales of a marijuana have been going up. Online gambling has been up. We tend to kind of, do things that make us feel good, just to do in the short term. The other thing I think is really kind of interesting to kind of point out, actually, even during this crisis, people are still buying. And then the things, a lot of businesses are feeling like, oh, people stop buying. No, actually, people are still buying. I have clients, they told me people are still buying because there's going to be a shift in how people spend their money. Think about it, you probably, if you plan a vacation to London, this year, or Paris, you say, no, I'm not going, I'm going to stay home. But what are you going to do at home? You may want to put a pool in your backyard. You may want to put a fence. This is exactly what happened. I have a client, they sell pools. Their sales are really higher than last year this time. People are buying. The other thing I actually want to point out is, with this coronavirus, so this is kind of like an equal opportunity thing. Everybody has a chance to get it, and everybody has a chance to, something bad happened to us. This probably touched on people's, deeper part of their, emotion is we think about our mortality. Am I going to live for another 20 years or 10 years? Maybe, maybe not. So might as well, I want to enjoy the things I can afford. So they may spend more on the things, they normally don't spend. Luxury items, the things I don't want to miss out driving that Beamer. I'll just buy a Beamer. So this kind of like, I think when it comes to mortality, they may actually, that mortality concern may drive them to spend more. So I think consumers are not really going to really cut back on much on their spending. They just shift their spending on different priorities, but they make more of their decisions on emotion.
Great tip, especially for the folks listening in the audience, and ideas that they might have for pushing their products and marketing their business. So speaking of the audience, just a reminder, #Neuromarketing allows you to participate in the drawing for a 1-hour session with Terry and to have him look at your marketing. It also enables you to ask a question if you'd like. And I do have a question from the audience here. If you tried to describe neuromarketing in one word, what would it be? I think that's kind of a complicated question. So if you had an answer, great. But if not, maybe what's a 2, 3, 4 short phrase that you would use to describe neuromarketing?
It's a really tricky question. I would say one word is hard to summarize the gist of it. But I think if I use 3 words, I would call it decision-based marketing. Neuromarketing is really about understanding consumer decisions. And traditional marketing very much, operates on the decisions made by the business owners and marketers. And then when they make the decisions, the decisions are actually based on their own decisions, based on their own preferences, what they like, what they don't like. But neuromarketing really shift the focus by using science to study consumers' decisions, especially unconscious decisions. So I would call neuromarketing decision-based marketing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. So in the past, you've spoken about the unconscious biases of our brains. And do you see those unconscious biases more predominant during this current period? So in other words, does stress increase the importance of folks' unconscious decision-making process?
Absolutely, Rick. There's one thing, kind of it appears in front of our eyes. I don't know how many people have developed the awareness of this. When we see bad news, when we watch bad news on news, we get scared. And then there's one really invisible tendency in our brains is we tend to follow the crowd. If everybody's buying something, we want to buy it. Everybody's hoarding toilet paper, we want to, stockpiling on toilet paper. So this actually came out of interesting study. I used this example in my TED talk. This study came out in 1975. They asked a group of volunteers to evaluate cookies from two different jars. One jar had 10 cookies. The other jar had only two. So the volunteers were told the cookies in the jar with only two left were in high demand and in short supply. So it's not a big surprise though that those cookies, the cookies in the jar with only two left, were rated as higher in quality and price, but because people believe, more people wanted them. But it turned out all the cookies used in the study were identical. So we tend to believe if something's wanted by more people, it must be good and valuable. So, we've seen this, across the board right now. People, if somebody, if we see on TV, on the news, people are buying toilet paper, people are stockpiling on bread, we're going to go out there buy them. I heard somebody told me it was really interesting. He said, bread, a lot of people on low carb diet, they're still going out, hoarding bread. They haven't really eaten bread for a long time. What's the point of hoarding bread when you're on that low carb diet? But when other people are buying it, we feel the influence, but that influence sometimes is not visible to us. So this is kind of one of the very interesting unconscious bias. And I think, why this bias is really important to understand for business leaders is because this is exactly how Amazon sells by using this bias. Go to Amazon, you think about you buy anything, you buy a TV, you buy a computer. How does Amazon help you decide, what to buy? Before you even see the price, before you even see the free shipping offer, before you even see how many items is left in the stock, Amazon is going to show you the reviews, the ratings, how many questions have been answered or asked, and whether this is the best seller in the category or whether this is the Amazon's choice. So Amazon's using other people's opinions to influence your decision. So this is a very powerful way to do marketing and selling because we let the consumers love to follow the crowd. When they make the decision, they're at risk of making a bad decision. By following the crowd, we feel safer. Again, comes back to the emotion. We want to feel safer by following the crowd. So this is a very invisible, this is kind of one of the invisible tendencies we have or biases we have.
So speaking of following the crowd and being fearful, obviously it's almost at a inconceivable level, the amount of fear people have and such. But how does that emotion, fear, tie into other things and change our behavior? You've talked about a little bit more, maybe a couple of other examples about how fear changes decisions.
Okay. First of all, fear can change our perception. When we under fear, we tend to overestimate the risk. We talk about that shock, the electric shock study. I want to share with you another study. This is actually kind of a really more interesting, it's very relevant. So in this study, they gather two groups of people to give the researchers an estimate. They want these people to stand on the balcony and to estimate the distance between the floor of the balcony to the ground. So the first group of people, they're regular people. They came out of estimate. And then the second group of people, they have fears of heights. So the second group of people who have the fears of height, their estimate is a lot longer, a lot bigger than the regular people. So when you're under fear, you tend to overestimate things. And then when under fear, we tend to, we're trying to be slow with our decisions because we don't want to take a risk. We talk, and I think a lot of people have heard of this unconscious bias called a loss aversion bias, which simply means we tend to avoid losses. But how do in terms of science, how to explain this? I want to kind of use a simple scientific experiment to explain this, how we perceive a loss against the game. So this is a kind of brilliant study. And this study comes in many versions. So here's how the study is done. So Rick, imagine, I asked you to invite you to play this game. And here's how the game is played. I flip a coin, we see heads, you win $10. We see tails, you lose $10. The question to you, Rick, is, are you willing to play this game?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, good. You're with most people. Most people are not willing to play this game simply because the pain of losing $10 cannot be compensated by the joy of winning $10. So, but now the question is, how high do I need to raise the winning amount in order for you to play this game? Do you want to come up with a number? What's the minimum winning amount?
Let's see. Well, odds are 50-50. So in theory, math would say if it was a little bit more. So if I won 11 versus losing 10, I would be better off. But I don't think I still would play it. I probably would need to get maybe $15 or $20 to play the game.
You're with most people, right? So the researchers found out is the minimum winning amount has to be around $25 to entice most people to play this game. So what this means is the pain of losing $10 can only be compensated by the joy of winning $25. So this kind of loss aversion at play. When we have loss aversion, loss looms larger than gain. So with loss aversion, where this kind of loss aversion prevents us from taking risk, taking losses. So every time we make a buying decision, this is kind of related to buying decisions, related to sales and marketing. People are hesitant. People are hesitant making decisions, not because they don't want to buy your product and service, just because they don't want to take the risk. So it's kind of understanding this decision process is very important. And then now we're doing the crisis mode, and fear is kind of a very prominent emotion. So I would imagine normally say the sales cycle maybe takes 1 week or 1 month. You may want to maybe the sales cycle may go longer.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
All right. So I'm not sure what that says about me. Evidently, I need more fear because I had a little less fear than most people. All right. So we're getting towards the end of our time. How about one quick little idea for the small business owners out there that maybe a growth hack or a marketing hack that you can share?
Okay. I want to share one thing that's kind of important. We're all in the lockdown. We don't go to meetings anymore. But some people say, lockdown, that give me the excuse we don't see anybody. But there are plenty of opportunities. Rick, you're doing a great job, creating this presence, grouping, getting people together. You have a presence. So people don't forget about Club E, don't forget about what you do. And also you create this platform for people to network, to socialize. So because the more you show up, by simply showing up, you increase liking. And then we tend to, unconsciously, we trust the people we like, we trust people we're familiar with. Familiarity leads to liking. I'll give you a quick summary of an interesting study. So this study was done in a classroom environment. This study shows that familiarity leads to liking. In this study, the researchers placed 4 research assistants in the classroom. These research assistants impersonated as students. They went to the classes, at different frequencies. They went to the class, sitting in the front row, so everybody can see their faces. And then at the end of the semester, the real students were shown the photos, these 4 research assistants. They were asked to rate which one you think is the most attractive one. And here's the result. The most attractive one appeared in the classes 15 times. The second most attractive one appeared in the classes 10 times. The third one appeared in the classes 5 times. The least attractive one never showed up. By just showing up, and then the students were asked, hey, do you like her more because you have seen her more? The answer is no. They like her more by seeing her more without their awareness. So just by showing up, different virtual events, clubby events, just by showing up, showing your faces, showing up, you increase the liking of the people, you're do business with, you subtly increase the trust in their head. So don't disappear. If you disappear, you become irrelevant.
So to me, the interpretation of that would be folks cutting their marketing budgets, not the right thing to do.
No, No, this is the perfect time to create something memorable. This is the perfect time to really try to understand consumers' emotions because our emotions are running high. This is the perfect time to study it. Yeah.
Okay. So last question, 30 seconds or less answer. One final word of wisdom or thought or perspective that you'd like to share with everybody.
I have been kind of studying, I've been studying different research literature to prepare for more talks, and also I want to write a book. I came across this really interesting technique about pricing because a lot of business owners, they don't pay attention to pricing, and then they think about this is how I want to price it, so this is how I price it, but they do it without any guidance from science. This is a recent research study published last year, teaches us how to price more effectively. So I give you here an example. Suppose you want to sell two TVs. One TV is the 20-inch, the other one is 27-inch. So the cheaper one is $200, the other one is $270. So when you price it this way, when you show the prices this way, most people will buy the cheaper one because they think that's a better value. But how do you increase the sales of more expensive one? How do you sell more the 27-inch TV? Well, according to this research study, all you want to do is by showing the price difference, by highlighting the price difference. When you do so, you increase the sales by a significant margin. You can sell the more expensive item. So this is a tip I want to share with everybody. It's a very effective sales technique, effective way to price your products.
Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that. And then again, thank you very much for joining us today. For those of you out in the audience who'd like to connect with Terry, again, his website is neuromarketingservices.com. His email address is Terry, Terry, at neuromarketingservices.com. Thank you again, Terry, for joining us today. And for the folks that are going to the kind of after party, digital after party, we will see you there momentarily. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Have a good one.